For my 20th birthday, Grandpa handed me the keys to his $1 million company. But after, my name is Emma. I am 20 years old. The night of my 20th birthday, the grand ballroom of our house felt like a movie set. It was beautiful, but nothing in it was real. The chandeliers dripped with crystal, shining like frozen stars. A string quartet played softly in the corner, but no one was listening. The air smelled thick, a mix of expensive perfume, lilies, and the champagne that waiters carried on silver trays. I stood near the French doors, wearing a simple blue dress. My mother Alara had wanted me in gold sequins. "You're the heir, Emma," she'd said, her voice tight. "You need to look like one." But I wore the blue dress. It was my small, quiet no. I watched my mother across the room. She was a vision in emerald green, her hand resting on the arm of her new husband, Victor. He was 10 years younger than her and looked like he'd been built in a lab to run a hedge fund. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, a smile that never, ever reached his eyes. They had been married for 6 months. My father had been dead for 3 years. The math on that always felt wrong to me. I watched them laugh with the other guests. They were not guests, really. They were board members, lawyers, and old money families who hadn't worked a real day in their lives. They were all here to see the show, the 20th birthday of the Hahn heiress. The night Grandpa was expected to officially name me his successor, I felt a familiar hand on my arm. It was my grandfather, Marcus Hahn. Before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? He was a small man, made smaller by age, but his presence filled the room. He leaned on a silver-headed cane, not because he always needed it, but because it made a very satisfying thud on the marble floors. He looked at me, his eyes clear and sharp over the rim of his champagne glass. "You look like your grandmother," he said. His voice was a quiet rumble. "Is that a good thing?" I asked, trying to smile. "It's a strong thing," he said. He looked over at my mother and Victor. His face didn't change, but the air around him went cold. "They are enjoying the party." "It's their party," I said. "They just invited me." Grandpa's lips twitched. "So they did. Now stop hiding by the curtains. It's time for speeches." He let me walk him to the head table. The music stopped. The talking faded. 100 pairs of eyes turned to us. I felt Victor's gaze on me. It felt like an insect crawling on my skin. My mother tapped a spoon against her glass. "Friends, family," she started, her voice bright and polished. "Thank you for coming to celebrate my beautiful daughter, Emma." She smiled at me, but it was a smile for the cameras, for the room. 20 years old. It's hard to believe. She talked for 5 minutes. She mentioned my father's passing, our great loss. She mentioned my difficult teenage years. She talked about the company, Hahn Industries, as a heavy burden. "My father, Marcus, has carried this burden for so long," she said, placing a manicured hand on her heart. "And I know everyone expects Emma to one day. Well, to try." The room was silent. "To try?" "But," Mom continued, her smile widening, "we are a modern family, and running a billion-dollar company requires a specific, strong, experienced hand." She turned and took Victor's hand. He stood up with her, looking humble. It was a practiced look. "From now on," Mom announced, her voice ringing with false joy, "my husband, Victor, will be handling the day-to-day operations of the company. He will be taking over as acting director." The chandeliers glittered. The air turned to ice. Everyone froze. Even the waiters. I looked at Grandpa. He was watching my mother, his face a perfect blank mask. I turned back to my mother. Victor was standing beside her, his hand on her back. A king accepting his new castle. "Absolutely not," I said. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. In that silence, it sounded like a gunshot. The music didn't start again. The violinist just stared, bow in the air. My mother's smile didn't just fade. It broke. It shattered like a dropped mirror. Her eyes, usually so warm and bright for the cameras, turned to chips of green glass. "What did you say?" she whispered. "I said absolutely not," I repeated, a little stronger. "Grandpa is the chairman, and he gave the company to me. The shares are in trust, and they become mine tonight." I had not planned to say it. I had planned to be quiet. But her words, "to try," had lit a fire. Mom's face went white, then red. She looked around, saw the eyes of the board members, and her embarrassment turned to rage. Victor put a hand on her arm. "Now, Emma, let's not be dramatic. Your mother and I have discussed this. This is what's best. I'm not talking to you, I said, cutting him off. My mother stepped forward. Her voice was low now, a hiss. You ungrateful little brat. After everything I have done for you, what have you done? I asked. Besides replacing my father before he was even cold in the ground? The collective gasp from the room was sharp. I didn't care. That's it, Mom snapped. Her public face was gone. This was the real her. You're done. You want to defy me? In my own home? Fine. Then pack your bags and get out. She pointed a trembling finger toward the grand staircase. Get out. I didn't move. I felt my hands shake. I was 20 years old, and my mother had just thrown me out in front of everyone we knew. I was a victim right there in a blue dress. I felt the tears coming. I would not let them fall. I looked to Grandpa. He hadn't moved. He was still watching. Then he did something that stopped everything. He chuckled. It was not a happy sound. It was low and deep and dangerous. It was the sound that silenced the entire room. All the whispers stopped. My mother turned to him. Father, Thud. His silver cane struck the marble floor. The sound echoed. He tapped it once. Good, he said softly. His voice cut through the silence. He looked at me. He looked at my mother. He looked at Victor. Now we'll see, he said, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner. Who truly deserves the Han name? No one moved. No one breathed. The board members looked confused. My mother looked furious. Victor looked for the first time nervous. No one understood what he meant, but I did, because Grandpa never said anything without a plan. And this whole night, this whole party, it wasn't a celebration. It was a test. And my mother had just failed. She wasn't always cruel. I know that's what people say about their monsters. But it's true. When I was little, before the money became more important than people, she was just Mom. My father was a quiet man, an architect. He loved books and old trees. He was the one who taught me how to be still, how to listen. Grandpa loved him for it. Your father is the only honest man I know, Grandpa used to say. He doesn't want anything from me. My mother, Ilara, was different. She was fire. She was bright and loud and loved being the center of everything. She and my father were a strange match, like a lighthouse and the quiet cliff it stood on. But it worked. He calmed her and she made him laugh. When Dad died, the car crash was instant. I was 16. The light in our house went out. For the first few months, Mom was a ghost. She would crawl into my bed at night, her body shaking with sobs. She smelled of jasmine and her expensive, sad perfume. You're my world, Emma, she'd whisper into my hair. It's just us now. You and me against everyone. I'll never let anything happen to you. And I believed her. I held her. I, a 16-year-old girl, held my mother together. I thought we were a team. That lasted for about a year. Then, Victor appeared. I met him at a charity gala my mother had forced herself to attend. He was an investment banker, he said. He had a portfolio, he said. He had eyes that looked at my mother not like she was a grieving widow, but like she was a new, shiny car he wanted to own. He smiled too much. His teeth were too white. He touched too much. His hand was always on Mom's arm, her waist, the small of her back. It was possessive, and he asked too many questions. So, Emma, he said to me at our first family dinner, his voice slick. You and your grandpa are close, huh? Yes, I said, moving my peas around my plate. That's great. That's so great. He's a powerful man. Han Industries, wow, big shoes to fill, huh? I guess. And your mom tells me you're the sole heir. That's a lot of pressure for a young lady. I looked at my mom. She was smiling at him, her eyes starry, like she couldn't hear the greedy edge in his voice. Victor, don't scare her, she said, laughing. I'm not scared, I said. He just smiled. Of course you're not. Everything changed after that. Mom's jasmine perfume was replaced by a heavy, musky scent that Victor bought her from Paris. The quiet nights we used to spend watching old movies were replaced by loud dinner parties. Victor's friends, slick, loud men and women with hard eyes, filled our house. Mom's grief faded, replaced by a brittle, desperate brightness. She started dressing in reds and golds. She cut her hair. She laughed at all of Victor's jokes, even the ones that weren't funny. He started asking questions about Grandpa's health. Is he, all there, at his age? He asked about the company. Who really runs things over there? Does your dad have any old partners who might be difficult? He asked about the shares. So this trust, it's all for Emma? Your own father didn't leave you anything? It's complicated, darling, I heard Mom tell him once. It's all tied up. We can untie it, he'd said, his voice a low promise. Grandpa saw it. He saw it from day one. That man, Grandpa told me after a dinner he'd been forced to attend, is a vulture. He's not waiting for something to die. He's trying to kill it. I tried to talk to Mom. I was 17. Mom? I don't like Victor. He just wants your money. Her face, which had been so soft and happy, closed. That is a terrible thing to say, Emma. But it's true. He's always asking about Grandpa's will. He's asking about my trust. He's interested, she snapped. He's trying to be part of this family. Something you wouldn't understand. You've been moping around this house for a year. It's time to move on. I'm moving on. Dad's only been gone a year. And what am I supposed to do? She yelled. Be a sad widow forever? Victor loves me. He wants to take care of me. Why can't you be happy for me? Because he doesn't love you, I whispered. He loves the Han name. She slapped me. It was the first time she'd ever laid a hand on me. The sound of it echoed in the marble foyer, my cheek stung. But my heart hurt more. Don't you ever, she said, her voice shaking with rage. Say that again.
He is a good man.
He is my future, and if you can't accept that, you can go live with your grandfather. I did. I started spending more time at Grandpa's house. It was quieter. It was safe, but I still had to go home. I still had to see them. The night I learned the truth, I was 18. I had come home from a late study session. The house was dark, except for the light from her study. I heard their voices, low and angry. I stopped at the door. It was open just a crack. Can't just ask him to sign it, Victor. He's not stupid, Mom was saying. I'm not saying ask him. I'm saying you're his daughter. You have power of attorney. If he's unwell, he's not unwell. He's healthier than I am. We can fix that, Victor said. My blood went cold. Don't say that, Mom said, but her voice wasn't shocked. It was tired. We have to be smarter. The problem isn't the old man. It's Emma, my name. My name fell from his lips like something dirty. She's his favorite. Everything goes to her. If she wasn't in the picture, what are you saying? Mom asked. I'm saying, Victor's voice was soft now, that she's a young girl. Young girls are emotional. They're unstable. If she were to say, have a breakdown, if she were to be found incapable of managing her affairs, a good mother would have to step in. A loving stepfather would have to help. There was a long silence. I prayed. Please, Mom. Please tell him he's crazy. Please kick him out. Then she spoke. Her voice was cold. Colder than I'd ever heard it. She's stubborn. She's too much like her grandfather. You're her mother, Victor said. You can handle her. We just need a little time. We need to isolate her from him. We need to make her look like the problem. Another pause. I could hear the clink of ice in a glass. Leave that to me, Mom said. I backed away from the door. My heart was a stone in my chest. That's when I learned. Silence. The thing I thought was weakness could be violent. Her silence, her not defending me, was a betrayal deeper than a knife. She wasn't just my mother anymore. She was his partner. And I was not their daughter. I was their obstacle. The heart attack hit on a Tuesday. It was fast, brutal, and it almost worked. I was in my dorm room at college studying for a finance midterm. My phone rang. It was my mother. She was crying. Real tears this time. The kind of tears you can't fake. They were tears of panic. It's Grandpa, she sobbed. He collapsed. They're taking him to St. Jude's. Oh, Emma, it's bad. I dropped the phone. I didn't pack a bag. I ran out of my dorm and drove the 2 hours to the hospital, my entire body shaking. When I got there, the scene in the ICU waiting room was a twisted play. My mother was crumpled in a chair, her makeup a mess, looking for all the world like a terrified, loving daughter. Victor was not. Victor was standing by the nurse's station, his phone to his ear. He was wearing a sharp navy suit. He wasn't crying. He was energized. Yes, I understand, he was saying, his voice low and firm. He's had a significant cardiac event. No, he's not. He's not in a position to take calls. From now on, all board inquiries come through me. Me. He saw me watching him. He clicked his phone off and walked over, his face a mask of fake sadness. Emma, thank God. Your mother is a mess. How is he? I asked, my voice raw. It's not good, kiddo, he said, putting a hand on my shoulder. I flinched away. The doctors are doing what they can, but we need to be realistic. He's an old man. Don't call him that. We need to prepare, he continued, ignoring me. For all outcomes, my mother looked up. Emma, baby. She held out a trembling hand. I went to her. I let her pull me into a hug. She smelled of stale perfume and fear. He's going to be okay, Mom, I said. But I wasn't sure. Grandpa survived. But just barely. He was in the ICU for 2 weeks. He was weak and small, and tubes seemed to be coming out of him from everywhere. I sat with him. I read my textbooks out loud. I held his hand, which felt like a collection of dry twigs. My mother and Victor visited, but their visits were different. They would come in, Mom would kiss Grandpa's forehead, and then they would stand in the corner and whisper. They whispered with doctors. They whispered with nurses. They whispered with a lawyer I didn't recognize, a man with a shark smile who suddenly started showing up. While Grandpa recovered, Victor began his helping. He moved into Grandpa's main office at Han Industries. He said it was just to keep the seat warm. He started with small things. He handled Grandpa's calls. He reviewed ongoing projects. Then the changes started. He called an emergency board meeting. My mother, who was still Grandpa's power of attorney for his health, signed the papers. She said he was too ill to be bothered. At the meeting, Victor gave a stirring speech. He talked about old-fashioned methods and new century thinking. He talked about trimming the fat. He fired Grandpa's chief financial officer, a man who had been with him for 40 years. He replaced him with a 28-year-old from his old firm. He fired Grandpa's executive assistant, a kind woman named Mrs. Gable, who had known me since I was born. He said she was redundant. He called himself the acting director. My mother smiled through it all. She hosted a lunch for the board wives. She talked about how brave Victor was, stepping in during our family crisis. She made it sound like he was a hero, not a hijacker. It was a quiet shift. There were no tanks in the street. There was no declaration of war. It was just a signature here, a new policy there, a restructuring. By the time Grandpa was well enough to be moved home, Victor was running the company. I stayed quiet. I had to. I was in my dorm or in the hospital room. I was just the grieving granddaughter. What did I know? But I remembered a lesson Grandpa had taught me. It was years ago. We were at the lake house. He was teaching me how to play chess. I was impatient. I kept trying to take his queen. I kept losing my pieces. I got frustrated and knocked the board over. He just patiently set the pieces back up. You lose, Emma, he'd said, his voice calm, because you think power is about attacking. How else do you win? I'd sulked. He'd moved his knight. You don't win by shouting. You don't win by being the loudest person in the room. That's what your mother thinks. She's wrong. He leaned in, his eyes sharp. Power doesn't shout, Emma. It doesn't charge. Power, it watches. It waits. It learns. It sees the whole board. It waits for the other person to make a mistake. And they always make a mistake. Sitting by his hospital bed, watching Victor move through the company like a virus, I finally understood. They thought I was a pawn. They thought I was a stupid, emotional 20-year-old girl. They didn't know I was a queen. And I was watching. I started watching. I played my part. I was the good, quiet girl. I went to my classes. I brought Grandpa his medication. I smiled when Victor made a joke at dinner. Poor Emma, he'd say, ruffling my hair as he walked by. All this stress. Don't you worry your pretty little head about the business. You just focus on, what is it, art history? Finance, I'd say, my voice flat. Right. Well, you just focus on your little degree. Victor will handle the big boy stuff. He'd laugh. My mother would laugh. I would smile. But at night, the house was mine. Victor had installed new security cameras, but he was arrogant. He was new money. He thought technology was the only way to spy. He didn't know about the old service hallways. He didn't know that Grandpa's office had a second hidden door behind a bookcase, a relic from the 1920s. Grandpa was recovering in his own wing of the house, with a full-time nurse. Victor and my mother slept in the master suite, on the other side of the mansion. At 2 a.m., I would slip out of my room. I'd take the old stairs, the ones the servants used to use. I'd let myself into Grandpa's office. Victor had redecorated. The old dark wood was gone. Now it was all glass and white leather. It smelled like chemicals in Victor's cologne, but he hadn't changed the computer. He'd locked it, of course. But I'm Grandpa's granddaughter. I knew the password. It was the name of his first sailboat, the Albatross. I started digging. At first, it just looked messy. Victor was moving money around. A lot of it. He was consulting with his old firm, paying them millions for advice. He'd started a new logistics department that didn't seem to log anything. It was all filed neatly, but it was all slightly off. The numbers were wrong. The invoices were too clean. The timelines were too perfect. I spent weeks doing this. Every night, from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., I'd slip in, copy files to a thumb drive, and slip out. I'd spend the next day in the university library, not studying for my midterms, but tracing wire transfers. I was falling behind in my classes. My friends thought I was ghosting them. I didn't care. I was pulling on a thread. And on a cold Tuesday night in October, the whole thing unraveled. I found a hidden folder on the hard drive. It wasn't in the main business files. It was in a folder labeled Personal. Inside, there was another folder, EH Project. My initials. I clicked it. My stomach turned to ice. Transfer drafts, dozens of them, all written in dense legal language. They were transferring ownership of key company assets to a new holding company, a company I'd never heard of, a company registered in the Cayman Islands, a company owned by VM Holdings, Victor. But that wasn't the worst part. I found another file. It was a PDF. It was my signature. It was scanned, digitized, and practiced. There were pages and pages of it, like a child learning to write. Emma Hahn, Emma Hahn, Emma Hahn. He was learning to copy my signature. And then I found the last document. It was a template, a letter. It was waiting for my signature. It was a voluntary transfer of assets. It was a legal confession. It said that I, Emma Hahn, was feeling overwhelmed and not in a position to run the company. It said I was voluntarily handing over my inheritance, my trust, and all my shares to my mother, Alara Hahn, and my stepfather, Victor, to manage in my best interest. It was dated for my 20th birthday. The night my trust was legally mine, I sat there, in the cold white leather chair, and I couldn't breathe. They weren't just planning to steal the company. They were planning to make it look like I gave it to them. They were planning to use my 20th birthday, the day I was supposed to be free, as the day they put me in a cage. If I hadn't found this, if I had just been the sad, stupid girl they thought I was, they would have stolen everything. They would have stolen my name, my future, and my father's legacy. I sat there for a long time. The sun was starting to come up. I closed the files. I copied them. I erased the search history. I walked back to my room, took the thumb drive, and taped it under my desk. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red. I was shaking, but the fear was gone. It was gone, and something else was there. Something cold and hard. I thought about my father. I thought about Grandpa, asleep down the hall. That night, I made a promise to myself, to them. If they wanted war, they'd get one. Quietly. The next morning, I was a different person. On the outside, I was the same. I was quiet Emma. I wore a gray sweater. I put my hair in a ponytail. But on the inside, I was made of ice and wire. I had to live a double life. My daytime life was for them. I was the obedient daughter, the naive heir. I went to breakfast. Morning, Victor. Morning, Mom. Emma, darling, Mom said, not looking up from her Vogue. You look tired. Are you stressing about those little exams? Something like that, I said. Well, don't, Victor said, snapping his newspaper. I just closed the AJ deal. We're up 9%. He was talking about a deal I'd researched. The AJ deal was a fake. It was a shell company he was using to funnel money to himself. I smiled. A big, bright, stupid smile. Wow, Victor. That's amazing. 9%. You're so smart. I don't know how you do it. He preened. He loved it. Well, it's not easy, kiddo. Takes a certain instinct. I bet, I said. It's a good thing you're here to handle it. I'd be so lost. That's my girl, he said, patting my head. My mother watched, and for a second I thought I saw relief. She was relieved that I was so easy to fool. She wanted me to be stupid. It made her pardon this easier. I ate my toast. The taste of ash was in my mouth. That was my daytime life. My nighttime life was different. I took the thumb drive. I made 3 copies. One I kept hidden. One I put in a bank's safe deposit box. And the third I took to a man named Mr. Thorne. Arthur Thorne had been my grandfather's lawyer for 50 years. He was old school. He wore 3-piece suits and believed in loyalty. When Victor restructured, Mr. Thorne was the first person he'd tried to fire. Mr. Thorne had simply said, "I do not work for you, son. I work for Marcus Hahn. Now get out of my office." Victor couldn't fire him. His contract was ironclad. So Victor had just ignored him, sidelined him. I met Mr. Thorne in a small coffee shop downtown. Not a Starbucks. An old place that smelled like burnt coffee and old books. I sat down. I was shaking. "Miss Hahn?" he said, not smiling. He looked like a sad bloodhound. "Mr. Thorne." I pushed the thumb drive across the table. "What is this?" "It's everything," I said. "The AJ deal. The holding company in the Caymans. The EH project. It's a template, Mr. Thorne. A letter, for me to sign on my birthday." He plugged the drive into a small laptop. He read. He was quiet for a long time. His face, which was already wrinkled, seemed to get tighter. He closed the laptop. "That bastard," he whispered. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to the air. Can he do it?" I asked, my voice small. "Can they win?" Mr. Thorne looked at me. His eyes were sharp, just like Grandpa's. "Your grandfather was a very smart man, Emma. He put clauses in your trust. He put walls around this company. What Victor and your mother are doing. This isn't just theft. It's forgery. It's fraud. It's a dozen felonies." He leaned forward. "They have the intent, but they don't have the action. Not yet. They're waiting for your birthday. They're waiting for the legal transfer of the trust. So what do? Control the paper," he said. My heart jumped. It's what Grandpa always said. "And you control the game. We have the paper. Now, we need their voices." The voices? We need to record them. We need to get them to say what they're planning. We need their intent, clear as day, for the board, for a judge. So we set the trap. My 20th birthday was in 3 weeks. The theme was An Evening in Gold. My mother was obsessed with it. I had to get them on tape. I used my trust fund money, the small part I could access, and I bought a gift. "Mom," I said a week before the party, I know we've been weird, and I'm so grateful. For you and Victor. For stepping in." She looked shocked. "I got you something. For your study. It was a digital photo frame. Very expensive. Very sleek." "Oh, Emma," she said, her eyes tearing up. "It's beautiful. It's high-tech," I said, my voice trembling. I was a terrible actor. "It's voice-activated. And it records like little messages. So you can, leave messages for each other." "How sweet," she said, looking confused. "I'll set it up for you," I said. I set it up on the shelf, right above her desk, where they had all their quiet chats. I set it to record, continuously, and to upload the audio to a secure, anonymous cloud server. The trap was set. The week of the party, I went to see Grandpa. He was sitting in his sunroom doing a crossword puzzle. He looked better. His color was back. 20 down, he barked. A wolf in sheep's clothing. 7 letters. "Victor," I said. He chuckled. "Doesn't fit, but I like it." I sat with him. I didn't tell him about the thumb drive. I didn't tell him about the digital frame. I didn't want to stress his heart, but I had to know. "Grandpa," I said, "at the party, what are you going to do?" He put down his pen. He looked at me. "What I'm going to do? Nothing." "Nothing?" "I'm going to give my granddaughter her birthday present. I'm going to eat some cake, and I'm going to watch." He tapped his finger on the arm of his chair. "This is your game now, Emma. Not mine. I just set up the board. You have to play." I nodded. I was terrified. "I'm scared I'll lose," I whispered. "You won't," he said. "How do you know?" He smiled, and it was a real smile, a warm one. "Because you're not playing for money. You're playing for family, for your father. That's why they'll always lose. They're greedy. He pointed to the crossword. A wolf in sheep's clothing, he said. I got it. Imposter. I kissed his cheek. I love you, Grandpa. I know, he said. Now go get ready for your party. And wear the red dress I bought you. The blue one is for children. I left him and went to my room. The thumb drive was secure. Mr. Thorne had the files. And the digital frame? It had been uploading audio for a week. I had it all. The paper, the voices. The trap was set. The invitations were out. The ballroom was being decorated in gold. All I had to do was walk into my own birthday party and let them spring it. The ballroom shimmered. My mother had outdone herself. Everything was gold. The curtains were gold-spun velvet. The tablecloths were gold satin. Even the champagne had tiny edible gold flakes floating in it. The whole room looked like the inside of a dragon's hoard. It was beautiful, and it was cold. I stood at the top of the grand staircase looking down. The guests were a sea of black tuxedos and glittering dresses. They laughed, but their laughs were high and brittle, like breaking glass. They were all here to see the transfer of power. They were all here to see me. I was not the naive girl in the blue dress. Tonight I wore the red dress. Grandpa had it made for me. It was simple, deep crimson, and fit perfectly. It was the color of blood. It was the color of a warning. I had my hair pulled back, and for the first time, I wore the Hahn family pearls, the ones my mother had always wanted. I felt like a target. I felt like an arrow. I walked down the stairs. The conversations paused. People turned. I saw the looks. They were sizing me up. They saw a 20-year-old girl in a pretty dress. They saw a victim. Good. That's what I wanted them to see. Victor saw me. He was standing near the orchestra, holding a glass of champagne. He smiled at me, a wide predator's smile. He lifted his glass in a toast. I smiled back, a small, polite smile. He thought I was his. He thought I was stupid. I found my grandfather. He was sitting in a large, throne-like chair near the front, watching everyone. He looked frail, but his eyes were on fire. You wore the dress, he said, his voice quiet. You told me to. Good. Now, remember, no matter what happens, you do not flinch. You do not cry. You do not show them anything but stone. They want a girl. You give them a queen. I'm scared, Grandpa, I whispered. I know, he said. That's why you'll win. Dinner was a blur. Course after course of food I couldn't taste. I sat at the head table between Grandpa and my mother. Victor sat on her other side. You look lovely, darling, Mom said, patting my hand. Her hand was cold. That dress is a bit mature, isn't it? It's a special occasion, I said. It is, Victor said, leaning across my mother. A very, very special occasion. A new beginning for all of us. I just nodded, my eyes on my plate. I could feel their confidence rolling off them in waves. They had no idea. They had spent the last week talking in her study, their voices recorded, their plans laid bare. They thought they were geniuses. They were just loud. At the end of dinner, the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the small stage. My grandfather. He stood up slowly, leaning on his cane. The room went silent. Thank you all for coming, he said. His voice was old, but it carried. We are here to celebrate my granddaughter, Emma, my only heir. He looked right at me. She turns 20 tonight. That is a special birthday in our family. It is the night the trust my father created becomes active. The night the next generation takes the keys to the kingdom. The room clapped. It was polite, quiet applause. I'm an old man, Grandpa said. He motioned to me. Emma, come here, I stood. My legs felt shaky, but I walked to him. He held a small black velvet box. He opened it. Inside, on a bed of white satin, was a single, heavy silver keychain. Engraved on it was the Hahn family crest, a hawk in flight. It was the master key, the key to the company, the key to the main vault, the key to his office. This, he said, holding it up, was my father's. It was mine. And now, he looked at me, his eyes soft. Your future, he said. He pressed the box into my hands. The room clapped, louder this time. I looked at the key. It was heavy. Thank you, Grandpa, I whispered. I turned to go back to my seat. Victor was standing. He raised his champagne glass. His smile was blinding. A beautiful speech, Marcus, he boomed. A beautiful sentiment, a key, a future. How Symbolic. He put his arm around my mother's waist. She was smiling, that wide, fake, too wide smile. She looked high on her own victory. Then she said the words. The words that I knew were coming. The words that turned the air to stone. Actually, Grandpa, she said, her voice high and clear, like a bell, Victor and I have a small announcement of our own. A little update. Grandpa just watched her. He gave her the rope. We are so proud of Emma, she said. But we all know this is a lot. Han Industries is a global corporation. It's not something a child can run. The room was so quiet I could hear the ice melting in my water glass. So, she said, to ensure a smooth transition and to protect the company and to protect Emma, Victor will be taking over operations from now on. He will be the new acting director effective immediately. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I've ever heard. It was complete. It was total. It was a vacuum. All the smiles were frozen. The board members, the lawyers, they all just stared. My mother's smile wavered. She hadn't expected this. She'd expected applause. Victor kept smiling, but it was strained. I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who had held me when I was sick, who had told me she loved me. Her eyes were hard. She was looking at me, daring me to challenge her. So I did. No, I said. My voice was calm. I'm the owner now. My mother's face went from pale to red to a strange mottled purple. She was furious. She was embarrassed. She glared at me. The mother was gone. This was a stranger. Then get out, she hissed, her voice low and full of venom. If you fight me on this, you're out. Get out of my house. I didn't move. And that's when Grandpa laughed. It wasn't a chuckle. It was a knowing, cold, satisfied laugh. He had given her the rope, and she had hung herself. My grandfather's laugh cut through the frozen silence. It was a cold, sharp sound. It wasn't happy. It was the sound of a trap snapping shut. My mother stopped. Her face, which had been twisted in rage, now looked confused. Father? Victor's smile was gone. He looked at Grandpa like he was seeing a ghost. Marcus, are you all right? Grandpa ignored him. He kept looking at my mother. Get out? He repeated, his voice dangerously soft. You're kicking her out? Your own daughter? She's defying me, Mom stammered, trying to get her power back. She's ungrateful. This is for her own good. Thud. Grandpa tapped his cane on the floor. Once. You, he said, have no idea what good is. He tapped his cane twice. Thud, thud. It was a signal. I knew it. Mr. Thorne, who was standing by the back wall, nodded. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. What is this? Victor said, his voice high. What's going on? My mother grabbed his arm. Father, stop this. You're making a scene. Oh, I am, Grandpa said. But I'm not the one who's going to be embarrassed. A projector, hidden in the ceiling, flickered to life. It shined on the large white wall behind the orchestra. And then, a sound, a digital beep. The sound of a recording starting. Victor's voice filled the room. It was smooth, certain, and full of arrogance. The old man is a dinosaur, Lara. He's sentimental. He's not going to just sign over the power of attorney. We have to be smarter. The room was silent. I could hear someone's breath catch. I looked at Victor. His face was white. He was staring at the speakers as if he could melt them with his eyes. Then, my mother's voice. Cold, practical, so what's the plan? We can't wait for him to die. That could take years. A collective, quiet gasp went through the room. The board members, their wives. These were people who had known my grandfather for decades. Victor's voice again. We don't have to wait. We isolate Emma. We make her look unstable. Her 20th birthday is the key. The trust becomes hers. We get her to sign a voluntary transfer. I'm too stressed, Mommy. I can't handle it, Victor. Please take this billion-dollar company off my hands. He laughed. The sound of his recorded laughter echoed through the silent room. It was ugly. I watched my mother. She was shaking her head, whispering, no, no, no. She knew. She knew what this was. She won't sign that, my mother's voice said. She will if you're a good mother, Victor's voice replied. If you tell her you'll hurt yourself. If you tell her the stress of the company is killing you. She's a weak, emotional girl. She'll do it to save you, more gasps. The wife of one board member was crying. And what about her trust? The EH project? Mom asked. The templates are ready. I've been practicing her signature. It's perfect. Once the old man signs or, has another episode. Emma's out. We'll take it all. The recording clicked off. The projector shut down. The lights came back up, slowly, to a room full of ghosts. Everyone was staring. Not at the screen, but at my mother. And at Victor. Victor was sweating. His expensive suit looked wrong. His face was slick. That's fake, he stammered, his voice cracking. That's doctored. That's illegal. You can't record someone in their own home. Oh, it's my home, son, Grandpa said, his voice like ice. Not yours. He stood up straighter than I'd seen him in years. He didn't need the cane. And it's not doctored. It's from a digital photo frame. A gift for my daughter. He looked at Mom. Her face was a ruin. The mascara was starting to run. And it's not illegal, Grandpa continued, when it is used to prove a criminal conspiracy, which Mr. Thorne has assured me this is. Mr. Thorne stepped forward from the shadows. That's evidence, Grandpa said, his voice full of disgust. Evidence of your greed, your betrayal. He looked at Victor. You came into my house. You ate my food. You tried to poison my family. You tried to steal my company. And you tried to destroy my granddaughter. He turned, his back to Victor, his back to my mother. He faced me. The whole room was watching. This was the real transfer of power. His eyes were clear. He was passing the torch. Emma, he said, his voice quiet but full of strength. Finish it. I stepped forward. The red dress didn't feel like a target anymore. It felt like armor. I didn't look at my mother. I didn't look at Victor. I looked at the board members. I looked at the men and women who held the real day-to-day power in my company. They looked pale. They looked sick. They looked afraid. Afraid that this rot had spread. Afraid that they were associated with it. I stood next to my grandfather. My mother is right, I said. My voice was calm. It didn't shake. I was surprised at how clear it sounded. My mother's head snapped up. She had a flicker of hope. She thought I was going to save her. Han Industries is a global corporation, I said, turning to the board. It's not a toy. It's not a personal piggy bank. It's a legacy. It's my father's legacy. It's my grandfather's life's work. And it's my future. I looked at Victor. He was staring at me, his eyes full of hate. The mask was gone. This was the real man. You, I said, called me a weak, emotional girl. I held up the silver keychain. The light caught it. You were wrong. I turned back to the board. You heard the recording. You heard the intent. Now I'll show you the action. Mr. Thorne stepped beside me. He was holding a leather briefcase. He opened it on the table. He didn't pull out one or two documents. He pulled out stacks. This, I said, is the EH project. A plan to forge my signature on a document that would strip me of my inheritance. Mr. Thorne placed a file on the table. On the projector, he put up a side-by-side. My real legal signature. And the fakes. The ones Victor had been practicing. This, I said, is the holding company. VM Holdings. Registered in the Cayman Islands. A shell. A ghost. I pointed to a man at the front table. Mr. Davies, you're our CFO. Did you approve the transfer of $10 million to an unknown consulting firm last month? Mr. Davies looked like he was going to be sick. Victor said it was for the AJ deal. He said it was sensitive. There is no AJ deal, I said. Here is the wire transfer. Here is the account number. And here, Mr. Thorne put down another paper, is the ownership of that account. Victor, Monsieur Price. Victor lunges. You little bitch! He moved toward me, but Grandpa's security, two large men in black suits, were faster. They grabbed him, one on each arm. They held him. He was trapped. Here, I continued, my voice cold, is every forged signature, every hidden account, every dollar you moved, every law you broke. Mr. Thorne laid out the files. One by one, it was a mountain of evidence. It was a tomb. You didn't just try to steal from me, I said, looking at Victor. You stole from the company. You stole from the shareholders. You stole from everyone in this room. I turned to the board. My grandfather is still the chairman. I am the sole heir. And as of midnight tonight, the majority shareholder. We are calling an emergency vote. Right here. Right now, Mr. Thorne spoke. A vote to remove Alara Hahn and Victor Price from the board, from the company, and from all access. effective immediately. All in favor? Every hand in the room went up. It was instant. It was ruthless. The motion passes, Mr. Thorne said, his voice flat. No, my mother screamed. It was a thin, terrible sound. No, you can't. I'm his daughter. That's my money. My money. It was never about the money, Alara, Grandpa said, his voice full of sadness. Get him out, I said to the security. They started to drag Victor toward the door. He was fighting, twisting. You'll pay for this, Emma. You'll never get away with this. I think I just did, I said. The doors to the ballroom burst open. But it wasn't just security. The cameras flashed. I had called the press. Not the gossip columns. The Wall Street Journal, Forbes, the Financial Times. They were waiting outside. They had been alerted to a major leadership change at Han Industries. They saw it all. They saw Victor, a man who had been on the cover of a finance magazine last month, being dragged out like a common criminal. They saw my mother, collapsed on the floor, her emerald green dress pooled around her, sobbing. They saw the board standing like stone soldiers, and they saw me, 20 years old, in my red dress, holding the keys to the kingdom. The cameras flashed. Flash, flash. The sound was like a new kind of applause. The empire they tried to steal was now mine, and the whole world knew it. The room emptied quickly. The board members left, one by one, stopping to shake my hand or my grandfather's. Their faces were grim. They were in damage control mode. They offered their support. They promised loyalty. They were rats, but now they were my rats. The press was ushered out. Mr. Thorne handled them. He gave a quiet, firm, no comment. He didn't have to say anything. The pictures told the whole story. The orchestra packed up. The waiters cleared the champagne glasses. Soon, the only people left in the massive, gold-ruined ballroom were me, my grandfather, and her. My mother was still on the floor, but she had moved. She had crawled or stumbled to the grand staircase. She was sitting on the bottom step, her shoes off, her face buried in her hands. Her sobs had stopped. She was just sitting, a broken queen on a cold marble throne. Grandpa looked at me. He was tired. The anger was gone. He just looked old. Go, he whispered. You have to finish it, I nodded. He turned and let his nurse guide him out of the room. I was alone with her. I walked across the empty floor. My heels clicked, the sound echoing. Click, click, click. I stopped a few feet away from her. She looked up. I had seen her angry. I had seen her fake happy. I had seen her stressed. I had never seen her empty. Her face was a wreck. The mascara was streaked in black rivers down her cheeks. Her expensive lipstick was smeared. Her perfect hair was coming undone. She looked for the first time her age. She just stared at me. Her eyes were red. You destroyed everything, she whispered. Her voice was raw. I stood there. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt cold and tired. No, I said softly. I saved it. Saved it? She spat. Saved it? You humiliated me. You turned my friends against me. You... She pointed a shaking finger at me. You're a monster. Just like him. She meant Grandpa. I'm a monster, I asked. My voice didn't raise. I didn't try to steal a company. I didn't try to drug my father. I didn't try to forge my daughter's signature. She couldn't meet my eyes. Her lip trembled. A fresh tear, black with mascara, rolled down her cheek. I did it for us, she whispered. It was the saddest lie I'd ever heard. I did it for us, she said, louder now, trying to believe it. Don't you see? Victor, he was strong. He could protect us. Your grandfather, he's old. He's weak. He was going to run the company into the ground. I had to protect it. For our future. For your future. My future? I said. My future was a legal document you were going to make me sign. My future was you and Victor shipping me off to a rest home because I was unstable. He said that, but he didn't mean... He did mean it, I said. And you didn't stop him. You let him. You sat there in your study and you planned my execution. My own mother... The words hung in the air. He loved me, she said, her voice a child's wail. He loved me? No, Mom, I said, and the word mom felt strange. It tasted like poison. He didn't love you. He loved the Han name. He loved the money. And you loved the control, she flinched. That was the word. That was the truth. You loved being Mrs. Han. You loved the parties, the power. But Grandpa never gave you the company. He gave it to me. He gave it to Dad's daughter. And you couldn't stand it. You couldn't stand that I had the power and you didn't. That's not true, she whispered. It is, I said. You didn't do it for us. You did it for control, and you lost. I looked at her, crumpled on the stairs. She was the woman who had read me bedtime stories. She was the woman who had kissed my skinned knees. She was gone. That woman was dead. This stranger was all that was left. I felt a sting in my eyes. The tears I hadn't shed all night, I would not cry. Not here. Not for her. I loved you, I said, my voice breaking just a little. I would have given you anything. I just wanted my mom. She looked up, her eyes wide. She had nothing to say. I turned my back on her. I left her sitting there on the grand staircase, alone, in the dark, cold, empty ballroom, the same way she had left me alone for years. My grandfather passed away 2 months later. It wasn't a heart attack. It was just time. His body was done. He died in his own bed, in the sunroom, looking out at the gardens. I was holding his hand. The company was chaos for those 2 months. I was working 20-hour days. Mr. Thorne was by my side. We were cleaning house. We were reversing Victor's deals, firing his people, and fighting off lawsuits. It was a war. But every day, from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., I sat with Grandpa. We didn't talk about the business. We didn't talk about my mother. We did crossword puzzles. We talked about my father. We talked about his first sailboat, the Albatross. On his last day, he was weak. He couldn't hold the pen. Emma, he whispered. His hand felt like paper. I'm here, Grandpa. Good, he said. He squeezed my hand. His eyes were clear. Now you understand. Understand what? I asked, my voice thick. What family means, he whispered. It's not blood, Emma. Don't ever let them tell you it's blood. He took a breath. It's loyalty. He squeezed my hand one last time. And then he was gone. The company grew. Stronger than ever. I wasn't my grandfather. I wasn't a shark. But I was my father's daughter. I was honest. And I was my grandfather's student. I was loyal. The board learned to trust me. I didn't lead with fear. I led with facts. Victor went to prison. Fraud. Embezzlement. A dozen other charges. He got 8 years. My mother, she disappeared. Mr. Thorne had handled the divorce. She signed everything. She took a settlement. She was still a very rich woman. But she was not a Han. She was not part of the company. She was not part of my life. I sold the grand mansion, the ballroom, the staircase. It was full of ghosts. I moved into a penthouse downtown, closer to the office. But sometimes when I'm driving late, I'll go through the old neighborhood. I'll drive past the old house. A new family lives there now, but sometimes I think I see her. A shadow in the window. A woman in a beautiful dress, looking out at a world that is no longer hers. I remember that birthday. I'm 20 years old, in a red dress. I remember the night her power, all her noise and her laughter and her anger, finally turned to silence. And I remember the night my grandfather's laugh, in that cold, silent room, became justice.